Hey everyone, my name is Wade and I'm a video producer here at BoxCast. And today we are joined by Tim Drury over at Christ Church in Fairview Heights, Illinois. And he's going to be talking to us all about his job at his church and how he does his video directing. So, Tim, it's super nice to have you today.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
So, Tim, tell us a little bit about your job at Christ Church and what do you do there?
Yeah, so I handle anything video. Pretty much if it's on a screen, my team is dealing with it, whether it's just graphics or videos live and produced. And then I lead the Sunday team of camera operators and some directors that we have.
You sent us over your camera plot, which I thought was amazing and really, really cool to see. Could you kind of just roughly break down what cameras you are using and kind of why you decided to place them in your sanctuary like this?
Totally. So I send this camera plot out like every usually Wednesday to my team. So they just kind of have an idea of where they're going to be. We also send out the Sunday set list too on a Spotify playlist so they can kind of listen to the songs and have somewhat of an idea. But camera one, all of these cameras are Blackmagic cameras. Camera one is their Blackmagic broadcast camera, the older generation. And then underneath it, I saw somewhere on YouTube a while ago, a guy was doing this. They put a micro studio Blackmagic camera on there as a wide shot. So then they were kind of getting two different shots with one person at the same time. And then our wide camera next to camera one there is just a Blackmagic Pocket 4K, and it just goes back and forth on a slider, and it stays wide the whole time. So we always have a good bail shot in case something goes crazy or we just don't have a shot to go to. Camera 4 is also in the back of our sanctuary. This one's a side shot, so we have slightly different angle from camera 1 and 5. And it can zoom in and zoom out, but it's a camera Blackmagic Pocket 4K also. And then we got camera 2 and 3 both on stage, being walked around by different camera operators, and those are the Blackmagic Ursa Mini G2s.
Yeah, I was gonna say I love how your broadcasts look, and it makes sense now that you're saying that it is with Blackmagic cameras. Those are super nice cameras, and I know we're gonna dive in a little bit deeper to maybe what each camera does and its functions. So let's just start with your live streaming service itself. And before we even dive into maybe your scenes and what cameras are zooming in and out, you have a pre-roll or like a pre-video to your whole service. Could you talk to us a little bit about what you guys put inside of that countdown video, I guess I'd call it?
Yeah, so we just started doing that to try to make the online audience feel a little bit more part of it. So this is a side shot off of our stage, and it's just a Blackmagic micro studio camera that we had laying around. That guy who usually hosts for us is our associate pastor, and he'll just talk to the online crowd, and he's doing online specific announcements. But it's just something we did to try to get the online audience a little bit more involved.
Okay, Tim. So let's actually talk about how you produce the live services every Sunday. And I want to start with that camera one all the way in the back of the room. Now, I would say most people would kind of call that just like a safe wide shot, but it seems like you actually have someone operating that camera and it moves, zooms in and zooms out.
Yep.
So, who's on that camera usually? Is it a volunteer? Is it someone that's worked at the church a long time? Or
Yep.
tell us a little bit about that.
Anybody on camera, unless I needed someone to fill in, it's most likely a volunteer. We have some staff people, but he'll just fill in because I had someone call in sick last minute or something. But camera one is almost always a volunteer. This shot, I mean, they're zooming out here, they're on a tripod, so we're trying to get them to do a lot of movement to try to match, our roaming cameras that are handheld. They're not shaky, but they have movement naturally to it. So we're trying to just always keep movement unless they're super tight, because this camera, being the broadcast lens, it can zoom in really far, get really tight. So they'll do tight shots of the worship leader, but they're just trying to capture people on that front line. And I'm always telling them, hey, the more movement, the better. When you're really tight, the person naturally will kind of move anyways within that frame a little bit.
Sure.
But if they're not tight, I'm trying to get them to do a zoom or a pan or some sort of little extra movement in there.
Yeah, and I think, leading into kind of your next shot, the one that's on a slider, when you told us about that in kind of our pre-interview with you,
Yeah.
I thought that was a great idea because you, again, going back to movement seems like it's very important when you're producing
Yeah.
your service. Having that slider movement, just that little bit of movement, is really really awesome. Was that a hard sell to get the church to get something like a slider or anything like that, or what slider do you use too, if you know off the top of your head?
It's GVM, the Great Video Maker or whatever it is, or GMV. Super cheap, nothing fancy about it. I go in every morning, I have to set its in and out points. And then
Okay.
we literally, after that, I do that like at 7 in the morning and it runs till our last service, which is at 11. So it runs, all morning and it's just going back and forth. And it really wasn't a hard sell. We got two of these sliders during COVID because we needed something to film a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
And, we wanted more movement. We didn't have enough operators because we couldn't bring in volunteers at the time. And it
Sure.
just allowed us to have that little bit of movement. And then I thought, why not have it in the back once we brought people in? And it is a lifesaver because when I don't have a shot, whether camera one's all the way zoomed out and they're in the middle of their zooming back in, and two and three are walking around trying to find a different shot, I can cut to 7 and I know I'm good pretty much no matter what.
But yeah, let's go to the cameras on stage because I think, again, watching your services, these are probably my favorite cameras that you have, camera 2 and 3, where they're actually up on stage, they're getting shots of people, the drum cage, they're getting shots of keyboard, they're getting, close-up shots of the singers.
Yeah.
Again, going back to who runs, like, those cameras, and how do you train people to get them up to speed to feel confident enough to even go on stage and do what they do?
Yeah, that is the hardest sell with those cameras is just getting people to be cool with being on stage. I train them. I have them come in. We just play with the cameras. Our band rehearses on Wednesday nights, so I bring my camera operators in on Wednesday nights. I let them just take the camera out there, kind of get a feel for it. It's just a DSLR lens on all those cameras, so it's not really hard for them to learn how to use it. They figure out where zoom and focus is, and then they kind of figure out what good shots look like. And a lot of it ends up being me coaching them on Sundays when I'm directing and just kind of saying, hey, maybe give me a little bit more headroom this time, or hey, get a little bit tighter because of this. And they just kind of learn from that. And the beauty of all the Blackmagic stuff is I control most of their settings from the back. So they literally just got to worry about getting a shot and zoom and focus, and everything else I can handle. And I try to make it as easy as possible for them with that.
Yeah, and let's just dive into that last camera, camera 4. Again, when we were talking to you, before this, I thought this was, again, a really smart idea where you just have a camera off to the side, you call it camera 4, where it is pretty much, for lack of better words, I'll call it like your training camera, where
Yeah.
someone wants to get involved, but they've maybe never even used a camera. They don't really know what to do, but you stick them
Yeah.
on that camera and anything they do is bonus. How did you did you see that in another church? Did you just come up with that on your own, or, like, tell us a little bit more about that?
So when we first started doing multi-camera stuff, we just had two cameras, and they were Boyer camera one and 7R in the very back, just like splitting the aisle basically. Camera one was always our primary, two was always kind of our training camera, so they could get their feet wet again doing it. And if they got us shots, awesome. If they didn't, hey, this is just good experience for them. And once we moved to more of the multi-camera stuff we have going on, we didn't have camera four right away. And I had people that wanted to be part of the team. They were a little timid about being on stage, and camera one's our main one for sermons. So it's like, I can't just have a new person on camera one because they got to follow the pastor really well. And it's tough sometimes. And
Sure.
that goes to our campuses. Our pastor's going to see it afterwards. He's our big boss. I want it to look good. So I worried about that. And I just had no place for them to train. And we had an extra pocket Cinema 4K camera laying around that we were not using at the time. I was like, hey, this can plug into our system really easily. Let's try it. And it ended up working out really well. It's a nice side angle. And like you said, whoever gets on it, it's a great training experience for them. If they get us something, awesome. If they don't, no big deal. It's just good experience. And like, I have my son in 7th grade, he runs it, no problem. But then I also have guys that run camera 2 or 3, they'll hop on it too, but they can make it a little bit more fancy, a little bit more advanced if they want to, but it can be also the easiest thing possible too. It allows them to hear calm also, so they kind of get used to what it sounds like when the band's playing and I'm talking to them, all of that together.
Yeah, and it teaches them to kinda take direction from you and what you like to see on stage and stuff like that. So are there any other maybe tips you could share about training volunteers and, little things that churches could do to, help people get involved with the live stream?
Yeah, I think the biggest hurdle we've had is just telling people it's not as hard as it looks. I think a lot of people think, oh my gosh, it's a camera, it's in our room, it's online, so many people are going to see it. It's really not that big of a deal when you break it down. A lot of my volunteers are shocked. I'll have them come in for an hour's worth of training that first time, and we go over a little handbook that kind of talks about some of the things we expect them, some of the roles, but also has all the different shots. And really, there's not that many shots that you can get. It's more getting creative after that. But just to get started, it can be super basic and it doesn't have to be hard. So I think just trying to explain that to potential volunteers or just your church in general, like, hey, we need people. It's not as hard as you think. Just come try it and then see if you like it or not.
Tim, thank you for sharing some of your live streaming tips with us today. It was really, really helpful, and I know whoever watches this video is gonna learn a lot.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was awesome.
We will link to Tim's live stream in the description below, and as always, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to comment. Thanks for watching, and happy streaming.